Okay, good morning. I'll start by, oh, they've really changed their software. Okay. Um, and racism is the slogan of the group Erace, which was formed in New Orleans in the summer of 1993. We seek ways through person-to-person communication to show that we are committed to treating all human beings with love, respect, empathy, compassion, and humility. Join us. Erace is an organization that does not espouse any political party. We have no religious affiliation. We believe in acceptance of all people and no personal attacks of any kind will be tolerated. We come with the intention to listen, learn, and not to argue. Okay. On the land acknowledgement. We begin today by acknowledging that what we know as the United States is the ancestral and unceded territory of many indigenous peoples and that there are many more nations and tribes that could be named here. Members of our meeting group today are on the lands of the Chitimacha and the Choctaw in New Orleans, the Creeks and Cherokees in Atlanta, the Takawan and Lipan Apache and Comanche in Austin, the Lenape and Piscataway in Washington, D.C., the Wampanoag and Nipmuc people in Boston, and the Kahlua and Mojave in Riverside, and the Lumbee in Fayetteville. We thank their ancestors for being stewards of these lands through the generations and through today. We need to protect and honor the history and people of these places. Despite centuries of colonial theft and violence, we should always remember that we are still on indigenous land and it will always be indigenous land. Okay. All right. Oh, I like your border. It's nice. Phyllis.
Oh, thanks. I was just playing and added it for
I
pride.
need to play around and add, do a few things. Like I need a virtual background because I know that Tato behind me is probably distracting everybody. Okay, keep yourselves on mute. I noticed that at the bottom of the screen, it's a little different than it used to be. They must have upgraded their software. They've added AI companion. Um, I think everything else is kind of where it should be. There's now a reaction, little tab, a little heart for reaction. There are apps and there are other different things. So I guess, you can play with that and see what it does. And, in other meetings, I kind of noticed it was there, but I still haven't had the opportunity to explore exactly what they are. But anyway, going forward, we ask that everyone keep yourself on mute unless you're speaking. We will keep a list of who wants to speak, and people are called in the order of the list. And you raise one finger to be on the list. And you speak in order of the list. Try to keep your comments to 2 minutes. Be respectful. Do not interrupt the speaker. No side comments, no personal attacks, no name calling. You may ask a clarifying question of the speaker. First, you gotta raise 2 fingers to get the facilitator's attention. And you can ask a clarifying question, which is, I didn't understand what you meant by, could you please explain? Blah, 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 blah. And only 2 people are allowed to ask a clarifying question of the speaker. Okay. We will go on till about 11:15. And then at that time, we will do a wrap up, which is your final comments. And please try to keep those to roughly about 30 seconds. It's okay to pass. Those people who have not spoken get a minute. Okay. So the reason that I brought up the topic, it started, I watched on MSNBC, The Rachel Maddow Show, her interview with Bonnie Willis. Okay, but prior to watching, before Bonnie Willis came on, she brought up a historical, now I've kind of forgotten exactly what the incident was, that it was a scandal in Washington, D.C. that, it was members of Congress collaborating with the Nazis during World War II. That's what it was. And they had a panel and a prosecutor to investigate. And so much pressure was put on that prosecutor, political pressure, and so forth, that the case eventually ended up being dropped. Okay. And she started off with that to lead into her interview with Fonnie Willis about all the harassment that she has received as a result of trying to prosecute the election fraud case with Trump. But it's just not Fonnie Willis. It is also the three women that are mentioned in this article, but it's also Alvin Bragg is coming under intense scrutiny and now has testified before Congress. And also Marilyn Mosby, although she doesn't have anything to do with Trump, but because she was investigating police corruption in Baltimore, she was brought up on charges of home mortgage fraud. And they were trying to send her to jail for like 20 years for home mortgage fraud because she took out a second mortgage on her home or something to that effect. But anyway, it's just, I mean, you don't hear about all of the cases where Black prosecutors are being harassed and are under political pressure. But, if you look at all of them, it's concerning that these prosecutors are facing this type of harassment. So anyway, I thought it would be a good topic to talk about. So that's why I brought it, and therefore the list is open. Okay.
Well,
Beatrice?
yeah, just really quickly opening. I did also see that Rachel Maddow show where she talked with Fonnie Willis, and Rachel's theme was, who is protecting Fonnie Willis? In other words, she's out there fighting for justice in a situation, and she's had to move out of her house. She's paying a mortgage on her house, but she can't live there. There just have been nonstop, death threats and emails with all kinds of awful comments. And the question becomes, who takes care of her? She is taking care of the business of the state as the DA. She is doing her job, but who is taking care of her? And when you piece that together with the information in this article, as well as the two other people, Chuck and the woman in New York, the concern also is not just what happens to them personally and the threats and all of that. What happens to the judgments the conclusions that they come to? What happens to the indictments, to the verdicts? Well, how do people look at what they decide? And how is that affected by how African American females in positions of power tend to be treated? And it's troubling. The fact that maybe their cases, once the decision comes in, are more likely to be appealed than other cases of people of other races, especially male. So it's widely concerning to me, and I regret, and this is not on topic, that Fonnie made poor judgment in her relationship with Nathan Wade, and I wish she would stop doing interviews. But that's a side comment. But that's my opinion about this.
Thank you, Beatrice. The list is open. Okay, Teresa and then Phyllis.
Hi, first of all, happy Juneteenth, and I got my silver chalice again because another privileged white man was found guilty. let me take a sip. You can't cheer without taking a sip. It's wonderful in one way that these Black women have attained positions of power, but it's humbling in another way to see, even so, it's always a reproving that you know what you know, and someone else has to look over your shoulder, double check your work. And it seems more of a matter of, even if they are right, it's the intimidation of not wanting any consequences for their actions, and how much of the country really believes that, if we were to make this stuff up, they would call us crazy, put us in an insane asylum. And then you have, and I just loved when Hunter Biden was found guilty, the right couldn't be happy because they can't make money off it. They only make money off anger. So, part of it is that this is a big money-making machine. And if you have that narrative, and I think one of the reasons why, at least in the case of Fani doing these interviews, how else is she going to tell her side? How else is she? I mean, it's not as much as possible damage control and controlling the narrative and being able to say her side and explain. And when you hear her talk, it's like, wow, just let this woman do her job. Her community believes in her. And then you have greater forces that it's just absolutely amazing that people think that the way to seek justice is by intimidating. And I think it was another article that I read is just like all the jurors on Hunter Biden's case, they're having interviews, you know who they are, there's no death threats. All the jurors in Trump's case, they're basically, one step down from witness protection program, because it's absolutely dangerous for them to participate in something that should be markedly American and having a trial, you know? So I'm sure that feels like 2 minutes. I couldn't hear a timer. Oh, Louise, I don't know if you're timing, Louise, but you're muted. So I don't know. I'll stop talking now, but
Yeah.
thank you.
That's fine. No, I didn't turn it on because,
Oh, the list was open. All right.
well, no, because I didn't turn it on because, for one, there are not that many people there. The only person that's on the list is Phyllis next.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
so you can talk as long as you want to, just
Well,
to,
the only
and it's
thing I missed was,
10:15.
yes, ma'am. The only thing I missed was I'm Teresa from Fayetteville, North Carolina, and I've been coming since August 22. Thank you.
And I forgot that part. I
Oh, I thought I
did.
missed it. I thought I missed it. Okay.
No, I don't know where it went, but I totally forgot that part.
Well, Nancy, nobody stopped you, so I figured I just missed it, so I just throw it in
Yeah,
now.
nobody
Okay,
said, oh,
sorry.
what about, and I guess because we know each other, it didn't really matter, wasn't that big of a deal, but I totally forgot that part. I don't know when I skipped over it. Anyway, okay, the next person, Phyllis, you're next.
Morning. So yeah, when I was listening to the interview, it struck me two things, which is one of them was somewhat touched on. The first thing was that after Fani Willis was elected, people protested outside her house about things that were left undone by the previous DA. I have never in my life heard of something like that happening. I've heard of DAs having protests outside their house while they're in office, but never going to the new person and being mad about something the previous people didn't do. I mean, give her a minute. She can't make magic happen right away. And then that after 14 minorities were elected to DA offices in Georgia, the state instituted for the first time ever a prosecutorial oversight committee. What? I mean, that's so obviously to protect the privileged and the powerful. They're not going to be caring if, minority people are getting arrested or prosecuted, they're gonna really wanna probably protect Trump, among others. So those two things stood out to me. And just how, Fonnie Willis has to have personal security at all times. I mean, it reminds me a bit off topic of Christina Blasey Ford needed to hide and have protection for a while after she testified for the hearing of the beer drinking guy. I'm just, it's just not how an American public official should have to live to do their job, to be doing their jobs correctly. And yeah, the powerful and even the not powerful white men in this country are just terrified of losing their power and or their proximity to power. And they're willing to hurt people to keep it. That's what scares me. Thanks.
Okay, Marianne, you're next. Unmute. There you
Oh,
go.
okay. I've been trying forever to get on. You all wouldn't believe I've been sitting here in this chair going crazy trying to sign in. Um, there was a discussion in my house about the attitude toward women. There's still this pervasive, or maybe not so pervasive, or I think it's pervasive attitude that the only thing women are supposed to do are cook, clean, and have babies. Now, if you consider that there's racism still existing in this country and that women aren't as good as men, well, if women in general aren't as good as men, but yet white women are held up to a higher standard, naturally, a Black woman is going to be at the bottom of the ladder. So I think more than anything, that's what it is. And as I said, we had a discussion here in my house between males and females, and some of the men were saying these stereotypical things about what women are supposed to do. And I said, you mean in 2024, you still have these attitudes that women are just supposed to cook and clean and have babies? I said, there's a space in our head that contains a brain. And we're capable of doing more than just cooking and cleaning and having babies. I'm not sorry I had babies, but I think I'm worth more than just giving birth to babies and cooking and cleaning a house. And the older men really are stuck in the mud as far as this is concerned about women's places in society. And you could hit them in the head with a brick, they're still not going to change their attitudes that women are supposed to be relegated to this position of cooking, cleaning, and having babies. And you throw Black women into the mix, we have brains, even though we're not supposed to have as good a brain as anybody else. But I think that goes into it too. Women are supposed to just fit this stereotypical pattern of cleaning, cooking, having babies.
Okay, that's it.
That's it.
That's
for
it.
now.
Okay, for now. All right. Well, the list is open. We don't seem to. Louise, do you have anything, or Larry, that you would like to contribute? Beatrice, thank you.
I just wanted to quickly comment on the legislation that Phyllis referred to about the oversight of districts of Columbia. This was the second year, District of Columbia, oh Lord, district attorneys. This is the second year that the Georgia legislature had tried to get that through. The first time when they did, they said it could not be done, that they had no right, that the state legislators had no right to oversee district attorneys because they are elected by the people. And if they're not doing their job, then the people will vote them out. But the second time, they were so intent on being sure because of what Fani Willis is doing related to Donald Trump to get this through, that there was a great push that we have to do something with these DAs that are these rogue DAs they refer to. And it is just so apparent that the fear, the overwhelming fear, and I think that is the great pull that Mr. Trump has, that this fear that is of the browning of this country, the giving of the women's positions, the rights of non-binary or gay people, whatever, anything that is not Christian, white, and male, because there are people who define that as that this is what the country is. And if you don't fall into one of those boxes, then something is wrong, and something's wrong with the country if it's going in another direction. And there's that great fear that white men are holding on by the very skin of their fingers to anything that will sustain that view of what America is. And whether it's voter suppression or just the whole game, the whole strategy, all of these strategies. So what's happening to DA Willis is just endemic of what is going on in this country, an attempt to try to override anything that might change the country from being what white people think it should be, Christian and white and straight, and the Baptist Convention, this thing about IVF. These kinds of decisions show that there's not really true character or basis for positions. For example, if you are for family, then why should you not be for a woman's right to make choices about if a woman is infertile and needs to have help, then why should you not accept that that's a possibility, something that person should be able to do? So it becomes overwhelming if you look at the whole picture of the strategy that people, the way that there are people who are trying to maintain something about a country that never should have been. It is concerning, and it's worrisome, and it's frightening, and it's something that is has to be a constant struggle for us.
Thank you, Beatrice. Larry?
Yes, good morning, everybody. And
Morning.
good to see y'all this morning. Just a couple of comments in passing based on what a couple of speakers said. Teresa came on and said, Happy Juneteenth. And just for the record, Teresa, we got Juneteenth wrong. I won't elaborate on it unless we have time later. Yes, Beatrice, we got it wrong. And then the other comment, my question, my response always to a woman's right to choose is, what about the baby? That's just always my response. I'll leave it there. But this pushback that we're seeing, it's not so much as the women prosecutors, because Alvin Braggs is also in that group. Fannie Willis, for one, didn't have no business going to AME Church in Atlanta talking about racism. I mean, she should have held her peace and understood the position that she was in as prosecutor in this case, and that was all the other side needed to hear. It was always an underlying charge that it was about race, but now she just gave them fuel for the fire. And so this attack on the judiciary is nothing new. And after the 1954 Supreme Court decision on Brown versus Board of Education, and then the 1955 decision with all deliberate speed, 1956, 101 senators and representatives in Congress came up with what they call the 1956 Manifesto. And that 1956 manifesto, which was signed by all Southern, mostly Democrats at the time, but that manifesto was to reject and restore, America to where it was supposed to be. In other words, they rejected the Supreme Court decision on separate but equal. So this pushback is nothing new. And the bottom line is it's reserved because we're dealing with white rage and white hate, and we're dealing with manifest destiny. We're dealing with the Indians and the Trail of Tears. We're dealing with slavery. This stuff goes much deeper than 2004. We got to go, 2024. We got to go way back into history to bring this thing up to date. And many of us are not willing to do that because sometimes we look at the present, and that's sometimes as far as we get. Thank you for this opportunity. That's all for now.
Thank you. Beatrice has a clarifying question.
Hi, Larry. I'm not
Yes,
sure.
Beatrice.
Hi, darling. I don't know if I'm going to phrase this correctly. Would you tell me what it is about June 10th that we have wrong?
Oh,
Juneteenth.
Appropriated Juneteenth, Lord have mercy. Oh God, I haven't been a long time. I can't talk. Juneteenth. Yeah, I'm sorry. I hope that's phrased correctly as a question.
yeah. Here's what we got wrong on Juneteenth. The Emancipation Proclamation that Abraham issued was against all the southern states that were in rebellion against the Union, okay? That all of their slaves would be set free. But now there were 4 states that were not in rebellion against the Union, but they had slaves legally. And those 4 states were Maryland, Kentucky, Maryland, Kentucky, Delaware, and Missouri. Those states had slaves, and they were still allowed to have slaves, but because they were not in rebellion against the Union and were not part of the Confederacy that the southern states had formed, they had formed a confederacy. In other words, they had formed basically another country. That's what the Confederacy was. They had their own currency. They had their own president, Robert E. Lee, I believe it was. So they were in total rebellion against the United States. So the Emancipation Proclamation was directed against those states, but the 4 states that still had slavery, that were not in rebellion against the Union, slavery was allowed to continue. And then even after slavery, you had what was called convict leasing, and where the slave patrol was developed after slavery, and you had your Jim Crow laws, and any blacks that were in violation of some of the Jim Crow laws could have been as much as not stepping off a sidewalk for a white person if you saw them coming in your direction, and other various things about Jim Crow. And they were arrested. The bonds were posted so high that they couldn't pay. Then they were leased out to businesses and industries. So it was slavery by another name. That was a book, by a matter of fact, Slavery by Another Name. So that's why I say we got it wrong on Juneteenth. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, it does. The list is open. Oh, Phyllis. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Teresa, do you want to say what you put in the chat? I don't want to. Go ahead and say it out loud because not everybody keeps up with the chat. And then I'll get it.
Okay, yes, I'm not a native Texan, but I lived in Austin for 14 years. And so I simply said, and I was one of the volunteers just about every year that I lived in Austin. But Juneteenth is not a celebration of the Emancipation Proclamation, which was first written in 1863. And it didn't emancipate a single slave. It was a bargaining chip. But anyway, Juneteenth is not a celebration of the Emancipation Proclamation, but rather the day that the Texas slave learned that they were free on June 19th, 1865. So there is no misunderstanding about the actual Juneteenth celebration, because that is when Major Gordon Granger did go to Galveston and announce to the slaves that they were free. Now, everything else you said is true. However, that is not the basis of Juneteenth, and that's not why the celebration started. So if you're ever in Austin, I highly, highly, highly recommend that you visit the George Washington Carver Museum. I wish I was there to celebrate again. Well, I wish I was back in Austin, let's face it. I wish I could just transport my family back there. But what you're saying is true historically, but that's not the basis of Juneteenth. So I just put that in the chat because, and a matter of fact, I'm wearing one of my Juneteenth. I got 4 Juneteenth shirts. So, and when my family reunion happens next weekend, I will be the person who is educating my family some more details that they didn't know about Juneteenth. And one thing I wanted, since we're on Juneteenth, do you guys know that hand jive song, Miss Mary Mac, 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 all dressed in black, black, black? Did y'all know that had to do with emancipation?
No, I did
Okay.
not.
I recently learned that
You can
too.
explain that too. Please explain that.
Okay, so, and I haven't fully researched, but Mary Mac is the name of a Civil War ship, and it was spelled Merrimac, and it was named after the river in Ohio. But that ship was used during the Civil War, and let me check my notes. I haven't done a deep dive on this, but the ship itself would have looked black with silvery rivets. So if you know, she says she was all dressed in black with silver buttons down her back. And that ship was involved in the Battle of the Hampton Roads in the American Civil War. I haven't had a chance to look up that battle myself, but if you remember that she went to, I mean, she asked her mother for 50 cents to see the elephants jump over a fence, and elephants are the only mammals that cannot jump. So that would be a strange thing. But the elephant in question is really talking about Lincoln, because he was a Republican and that is their animal. So the elephant that was jumping so high over the fence refers to the Mason-Dixie line, which was the boundary between Maryland and Pennsylvania in the United States. And the states above the Mason-Dixie line were free, meaning not having slavery. Below it, it was the slave states. And also the Ohio River was the dividing line as well. And so the elephant jumped so high, it touched the sky, didn't come back until the 4th of July. Well, the 4th of July has all been celebrated since, 1776, when it's like the American Independence Day, which occurred 89 years roughly before 1865. And when slaves, all right, nice. You changed out of your race shirt until Juneteenth. Okay. And so that song, and this to me is just another masking. First of all, it was illegal to teach slaves how to read, but that didn't mean that they couldn't still be geniuses and illiterate. And so they disguised this celebration, because they have to disguise Black joy, really, about being free in this song. And so the song became popular around the 1880s, which was roughly 15 years after emancipation. And so anytime and I just learned of this myself, and then there's all these YouTube videos of people of all races doing Miss Mary Matt and doing that. And that's the fact that I'm going to share with my family, my extended family, because I just thought, wait a minute, I'm 53. Why didn't I know this? And then anybody else I talked to, they didn't also know that. But all these videos of different people doing this song, and I had just wondered, I wonder if you would still do the hand jive Miss Mary Matt if you knew that was an emancipation song. I'm not going to tell nobody. But, I just love that that is so common and so ingrained, and it was just kind of disguised, just like it kind of reminds me of just the secret messages in certain work songs that slaves sung, and it just sounds like it was just a work song, but there was actually a message. And then the traditions of putting messages in quilts. So I took up a lot of time, but thank you for the
Oh,
indulgence.
it was very interesting, and I did want to know. I mean, that's part of the reason that we have these meetings is, for not only to discuss, but primarily to learn.
Well, that's
To
why my
me.
family always gets me to do an educational part in our family reunions. And yes, we are meeting for the 83rd consecutive year on my mother's side of the family. So this has been started since she was 1. So thank you for your
Okay.
indulgence.
Thank you. Okay, Phyllis, did you still have something you wanted to say?
Yeah,
Because you were the last person on the list.
oh, well, somebody else raise your finger. I think Beatrice needs to tell us after I'm done about her wardrobe change. Because I'm sure it has meaning. First, I wanted to also give historical correction that Robert E. Lee was not the president of the Confederacy. That was Jefferson Davis.
Yes.
And the Merrimack River is not in Ohio. And it's like the East Coast, New Hampshire, Maine, Massachusetts area. And I only looked that up because I'm from Ohio and I'd never heard of that river in Ohio. So I was like, where is it? Yeah, I think to go back to the articles, it is 100% more likely that women, Black women in positions of power are going to face sort of persecution or being overly watched, criticized for things that a white male in their position has probably gotten away with for centuries. I mean, Bonnie Willis is a grown woman, and the person she had a relationship with was not an opposition person. He was on her own team. So there was no conflict of interest that way. Maybe there are things in the legal, ethical world that I'm not aware of. But I'm not really spending any time judging her or him on that. So I would just say, let's just remember that even if there are men being persecuted or attacked who are Black men in power, it's still coming down 100% harder on the women. That's all for now.
Okay. Thank you, Phyllis. The list is open. I see, Gwen, that you've joined us. Would you like to make a comment on this topic?
Yeah, like I said, I don't. I've seen the, you know, I don't see those women who are bringing Trump to justice getting the most slander than anybody else, uh, uh, or attacked. I know the judge who was over that. Uh, the judge who was over the rape case. He was attacking he was attacking the clerk, the judge's clerk, a white female. I mean, attacked the judge, showed no respect for the absolute. He hasn't shown no respect for any judge. Uh, the last judge in the court showed nothing but disrespect, and and talks about them so that the crowd will attack the, will attack them, have them in fear of being attacked by one of the crazies out there in the society. So I'm not seeing how that's just somebody to me just writing an article and trying to have a different niche about something. But he's giving everybody an equal dose. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. The list is open. Anyone? Larry? Unmute Larry.
I'm sorry. Okay, thank you for that correction, Phyllis, on the president of the Confederacy. Jefferson Davis is correct. But on page 8 of the article, third paragraph, it says the rise of Donald Trump to power was undeniably fueled in no small part by a wave of angry white men. Those 3 judges happens to be Black females, but the angry white men, anger is directed at anybody who's in a position to challenge their power and their authority. Then the article goes on to say these men feeling disenchanted and disempowered in a changing world found a champion in Trump, who promised to restore their perceived sense of entitlement and return to a bygone era where they believe was rightfully theirs. This surge of angry white men has manifested in various ways, encompassing political extremism, domestic terrorism, and the rise of movements like alt-right and the men's rights movement. So this has gone much beyond just an attack on 3 Black women judges. The angry white man see this as an attack. If y'all remember way back in the day in boxing, where Jack Johnson came up and was beating every white challenger, and white people searched from heaven to hell to try to find somebody that could beat Jack Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody that came up against Jack Johnson was deemed to be the great white hope. Well, Donald Trump is that great white hope. And before he won his first election, he said he could stand on, I think it was Fifth Avenue or somebody, and shoot somebody and survive. So to those people, he could do no wrong. He is their great white hope. And they're going to go down fighting for him, whether he's wrong, and he is, you know. So if they have to attack every judge, whatever color they are, if they have to attack every brown person coming across the border, if they have to say they were right to institute slavery, they were right to displace the Indians, they're going to do everything they could to make America great again in their eyes, which America never was great, never was a Christian nation, never was a democratic nation, you know. So we have nothing to boast of, this falsity of being this great America, you know. So I'm sort of like Glenn. I don't think it's exclusively because the 3 judges were a female. Thank you.
Okay, let me clarify a little bit before. Well, Larry, you would have been here. Glenn would not have been here. In the beginning, I mentioned the fact that I was trying to find an article that was inclusive of all Black prosecutors. And I couldn't, this is what the best one that I found, okay? But I did mention about Alvin Bragg, okay? I did say
Yeah,
something
you
about
did.
Alvin Bragg, okay?
Mhm.
That he's now having to testify in front of a congressional inquiry. All right. So also I found articles that not only talked about Alvin Bragg and Fonnie Willis, but I did find articles that brought in Jack Smith, all right, as being politically persecuted. So no, it is not specifically just about Black women, but if you look overall at the three women mentioned in the article, because I don't remember the other two's names offhand. But including Marilyn Mosby, and there are other Black women who are in positions of power and have risen through the ranks to become DAs in their respective jurisdictions that are facing political persecution just for being who they are, what their skin color and gender represent. And so that is why I brought the article, but you're absolutely correct in saying that anybody who challenges Donald Trump or holds him accountable, I mean, they're going to have a fight on their hands, because this is challenging white man's way of life and his rights, and what he feels are his God-given rights on this earth. And yeah, they're going to be in for a fight. So, you know, when you're trying to search through the media, and maybe I didn't have the resources, or was, I kept trying to put in different parameters, to get the article that I was really looking for, but this was the best one that I found that encompassed what I was trying to say. And it's not exact, but it's the best that I could find.
And it's a good article.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. So Larry is actually it's 10:49, but does anyone else have, and I mean, feel free to also talk about Marilyn Mosby and also talk about Jack Smith. I mean, that's fine. Normally we bring an article and it is to jumpstart a conversation. And usually it meanders, off into other
Yeah, I
areas,
have something I
which is
wanna,
fine as well. Okay, Glenn,
Yep.
yes.
Yeah, I've known women that became CEO of big companies, and they were respected. Uh, and they didn't have no short term being the CEO of the company, because they were a benefit to them. And and I also see with Fonnie Willis, that the judge who went through all this rigmarole, bringing up all these things that has nothing to do whether these people can get a fair hearing or not. I think he was scared of Trump, and why he trying to bend over backwards was something he shouldn't even been bending over backwards over. You know, it would have nothing to do whether they was going to get a trial uh, that was unbiased or not doing anything against their rights. They bringing up charges that this man might have got some free wages for work he hadn't done, a free trip for stuff he didn't do. It had nothing to do with whether they can have a fair trial or not. So the judge, in that case, I think he just caved to the to the political pressure. Yeah, political pressure. Yeah, so that's how I look at that. This case should have been going on by now. Now she's up. Now that gives them a door to now really take her off the case. Somebody else now is viewing her and seeing if they should take her off the case. When they take her off the case, well then, the whole case gonna fall apart. It's got to be. It would take too long of a time to put together again. So that was just a strategy that they used. Throw spaghetti against the wall and see if something will stick. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Beatrice?
I'm just going back to the article for a minute. I just wanted to point out the information about the Harvard study that Black federal district judges are challenged in gaining recognition of their integrity and competence within the justice system. and that Black judges are more likely to be overruled than their white counterparts. And so the fact that that kind of thing does happen to others is not indicative of the fact, does not erase the fact that it happens more frequently to African Americans in such positions. And I think that the article was very pointed in making that statement. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, the list is open.
I'll say this on that. Yeah,
Okay.
I think in the future there'll be less scrutiny. There'll be less of that of a problem. It always become less of a problem. You know, they used to talk about the black quarterback. He wasn't. He was not. He didn't have the intelligence to run a team. He could only, be running backs or line. But over time, now we see that they are some of the best quarterbacks. They are right now in the NFL the best quarterbacks. Uh, so the same thing with putting you over a company. Yeah, in the beginning, it'd be like that for the first one. Or putting you as an officer in the military, giving you a rank of a general. It may be like that in the beginning, but over time, it becomes normal like everybody else. That's all I say.
Okay, I think last meeting I established myself as not being a sports fan, but Glenn, you brought up a beautiful point about black quarterbacks because again, I wouldn't have cared, but I happened to catch the news while I was eating, and they were talking about the race of quarterbacks, and even white men in Texas said, "Nah, it doesn't matter what race they are if they know how to play the game." And I thought, whoo, how far we've come when they can take a random white guy in Texas. No, I don't have high expectations unless I know they're from Austin. And yes, we do have racist people in Austin, but the probability that they're liberal, I mean, that's the only place I would live in Texas. But I was very, very impressed that they just interview after interview, and they weren't saying, "Oh, let's talk to this white guy." It was, a hardcore football fan, and they said no, it has nothing to do with race. They have the best whatever, and I just thought, wow, here is a winning endorsement of black football players or sports kind of breaking the barriers or boundaries. And it's to happen the same way with Caitlin Clark. I mean, again, watching GMA while I'm eating breakfast and the whole discussion about race and gender involving sports. That was such a great discussion that way. I mean, this is also a good discussion, but when our meetings precede what happens in the news, or I feel like we pre-spoke of it and then you hear even more about it in the news, or maybe I just paid more attention because we talked about it. So I think that's absolutely true. The people who are the pioneers, they get the real painful treatment, and then after a while it's normalized. I mean, let's remember there are some Americans who were when they were younger, all they knew is that they had a black president for 8 years, and that is their reality. So when you think about what's normal or what's common or your experience, and so coming up and seeing, black women in positions of power, that's your normal. And I know some of my younger cousins who are going into the medical field. I had one who said that she's going to be, I think it was a psychiatrist or something like that, or something in the medical field. And her tagline was, "So I can join the 3% of black women who do this position." And I'm thinking, well, the good part is if there's other like-minded young black women, that percent, you're going to be joining hopefully the 6% and not just, the percentage flatlining when you enter. So.
Okay. Thank you, Teresa. Does anyone else like to get on the list or make a comment? Because if not, it Oh, okay, Beatrice, thank you.
Okay, can I just say this? My concern, and I love the conversation and I love the idea that our places in certain, our positions in certain spaces and places will be normalized. My concern is that on day one, when I step into a position, I'm there because I'm ready. I don't need anybody I don't need longevity to test that. I shouldn't have to labor under the imposter syndrome. If I'm there, I'm the person for the job. And I should not have to have anybody doubt me, question me, doubt my decisions, or anything like that. And I think that is what is happening with these particular people that we have talked about, that were talked about in this article, and that tends to happen to African American people in certain positions. That your decisions, especially judicial decisions, and according to this article, are doubted, more likely to be to have people question them, to have appeals against them. So I'm just saying that while I recognize the ability to people, to us to be normalized in certain places, day one, when I walk in the door, I'm ready. And I'm more ready than most of the people that are there anyway, or I wouldn't have gotten there. So I just want us to be careful not to normalize people being doubted because of who they are. Not ever, not whether it's your gender, race, whatever, your gender, what your gender identity, whatever. Day one, if you're there, you're ready, and don't treat me any other way.
Yeah. Thank you, Beatrice. Okay, well, now we've generated Larry and then Marion.
Yes, Beatrice, it would be all of our hopes that we all would be ready, but nevertheless, that's a part of the judicial process, the process of appeals, whether you're a white judge, whether you're a black judge, the process of taking it to a higher court. Now, I would admit that these black judges are under more scrutiny. And for that reason, we hope that they get it right. But nevertheless, they are still subject to error, subject to having their cases appealed. But I think in this case now, and in the era that we're in with Trump, they could be 100% right. But Trump's gonna find a reason to appeal their decision. And so this thing goes much deeper than just these three black women judges. And just on another issue before we go, Galveston, Teresa, correct me historically if I'm wrong, but the message that the slaves got in Galveston was that they were free. Free based on what? They didn't get the message of Lincoln in the Emancipation Proclamation. So it was about the Emancipation Proclamation. And the very fact that the four southern states, the four border states that still had slavery, that in itself gives a testimony that we were not all inclusive. And how can we celebrate Juneteenth knowing that there were four states that still had slavery? And that convict leasing didn't officially end in 1945. Our people were still in slavery. Segregation, Jim Crow, apartheid, And when all the Republicans in Congress voted for Juneteenth, I knew right then there was a sinister reason behind it. And it's playing out right now. And we're falling for it. We've fallen right into the trap, massively falling into the trap. Just another reason to twerk and shake and dance and eat and greet and celebrate. Just another reason. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Larry. Well, maybe my article should have been about the real reason behind Juneteenth becoming a national, holiday, because anyway, I was always suspect of that. We asked for police reforms, and you give us Juneteenth. Anyway, I have Marion, and then Glenn, you have your hand up. Then we're going to go on to wrap up. So, Marion?
Okay, you all have heard me say this before, and I'm gonna say it again. I may be speaking to the choir, but if you talk to, which I know you do, talk to your friends, your colleagues, your neighbors, your relatives, whoever, you can tell them I said this. As long as we cannot get past looking at a human being, I've been scanning the screen since we've been sitting here, and I see human beings on this screen. I am a human being. If we could just get some of us, I don't mean the people here in this forum, could get past what people look like. And that's what it is. There's some people I really believe cannot get past the physical characteristics of a person. I'll use myself as an example. Some white person sees me, calls me an ugly name. You don't know me. Why are you calling me these ugly names? Some way, I don't know if it's ever going to happen. I've told my granddaughter, I'll be dust or ashes by the time human beings realize this. We're going to have to get past assuming and just looking at someone's physical characteristics and making these negative judgments. Well, 300 years, there were people on this continent that were enslaved. And it had to do with their physical appearance, them being sold into that situation, and being held in that situation because you had a huge conglomerate of people that believed they were actually inferior. So they deserved to be enslaved. Not a single one of you on the screen deserves to be mistreated, disrespected, dehumanized, bullied, beat up, attacked, whatever, because of what you look like. And I had the occasion to tell people on several, I did not create myself. We have the biological capability to reproduce. But deep down in my heart, I believe there was a superior entity that wanted diversity, not just among, and you all have heard me say this before, not just among plants and animals, but above the highest form of life on this particular planet, human beings. And God help us, some of us cannot get past that. You look at my dark complexion and you assume I'm an idiot, I'm inferior, I'm not worth being treated with respect. And that's just so unjust, so unfair. We
Okay.
are
Well,
all human beings. And I
thank you,
find
Marion.
myself thinking as I come to the end of the road, maybe it's a good thing we don't live forever. And these people that had these horrible ideas for 300 years, thinking that somebody with my complexion deserved to be enslaved, I was not supposed to have liberty or freedom just because of what I look like. Maybe it's a good thing. Death is a good thing. When
Okay, well,
you're
thank
gone, you're
you.
gone, and
Marion.
that's a good thing. You don't have to carry this for another
Oh,
200 or 300 years.
all
And even
right.
though we've come as far as we've come, we still haven't come far enough.
Okay, is that it? Okay.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Glenn, and then we're going to the wrap up.
Well, I can kind of understand why white people doubt that you can fill a position of leadership. I can understand
Really?
that. When they know that your head was completely emptied of knowledge for a period of 300 years, you weren't allowed to read, you were only allowed to be a farm animal. and that your head was completely empty. You were an empty vessel. And after losing that much in 300 years, and they know this, they know your history. Do you expect them to have confidence in your leadership? So take that into consideration, that it's not just color, because there are Africans with your same color. There are Haitians with your same color. And they had put them in positions of authority where they wouldn't trust you in positions of authority. Just something to
Okay.
think about.
Thank you, Glenn. We are going to now move on to the wrap up because it is 11:08. All right. And there's Jilly is Greer, is that you? And Louise, who have not spoken, and they can have a minute for their wrap up. So Louise, would you like to start? Oh, Jilly is gone.
2 minutes, isn't it?
What, the
No,
full 2 minutes? Okay, the full 2 minutes. Go ahead.
no, I don't actually need it. I was just saying that I do have it if I choose, but I don't choose because I don't have much to say. It was good discussion. Yeah, sorry, I've just been a bit vacant and not present this morning. Except for, and I do have to say, Glenn, I want to, wrap your knuckles for being so rude and disrespectful to your sister. Um, she's talking from her heart. She's saying some lovely things as she always does. I love you, Marion, for that. And then, you go and spoil it all by saying, I hope so. It's kind of rude. Just saying. Anyway, bye everybody.
Bye, Louise. Okay. Julie is not here, so everyone else. Well, I thought it was 30 seconds to wrap up, but then I saw somewhere a minute, so there's some conflicting information, but a minute for your wrap up, please, beginning in the order as I call on you and I see you on my screen. So Phyllis, would you please start?
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to, somebody brought up that the Southern Baptists voted against IVF, which is in vitro fertilization. And I think Marion was talking about the choice of women to actually want to have babies. And so the comment, what about the babies, was not really accurate to that discussion. But as I will be until my dying day, women have the right to get pregnant and the right to terminate a pregnancy. And it is their choice, and they have the right to exercise it, no matter what people in power, whether it be in the state or other institutions, try to tell them. Thanks.
Thank you, Phyllis. Teresa.
Hi, thank you so much for this article. I didn't mean to hijack it with my talks of Juneteenth. It's just that the holiday
Right.
is imminent and it's on my mind, and I am happy to be a free Black person, and I do look optimistically that as more representation is out and into the world in our society, that hopefully this type of thing becomes less and maybe a thing in the past. And I kind of feel you, Marion, when it's just like, oh, I'm going to be dead and gone when this is finally resolved, if it's ever resolved. I mean, people can hold grudges and backwards thinking. I mean, and really educated people will hold on to something because they feel that that is the path to hold on to power. And I used to call it, when I was an educator, willfully ignorant. You have the facts before you, you don't want to accept them, and there's nothing that could be done. That, it would have to really take somebody that person actually trusts to just like getting someone out of a cult. It has to be somebody who that person who is in that cult to get them out. So I just hope enough people have someone like that in their lives. And I'll see you guys next time.
Thank you, Teresa. Marion. Marion, unmute.
I'm still getting this
It's
internet.
unmuted.
Am I unmuted?
You're unmuted.
Okay, all right. I'm getting this internet connection weak. It says I have a weak internet connection. Okay, I thought this was a great article, and I thought we had a pretty good discussion. I appreciate the focus. I think it's something that we could continue to talk about again. And I will continue to be on my soapbox about human beings being human beings. We just got to look at each other as belonging to the group of humanity. We are human beings, and the Creator did not make a mistake when He created the diversity among us. I know I'm repeating myself, but I think it's just a beautiful thing that everybody's not walking around a clone of himself or herself. Twins and triplets are nice, sextuplets too, but I think how we all have this diversification in our physical appearances is a great thing. So thanks for the article.
Thank you. Larry?
Yes, Marion, I agree with your assessment. And that is the very reason why God came into the world through Jesus to tear down all of these walls of petition. But unfortunately, they're still with us. And I didn't see Glenn, Louise, I didn't see Glenn as saying anything so contrary to Marion. I support what Glenn said also, but that wasn't to put down Marion, because I supported what Marion said. And so we always have to be careful how we try to put down the voice of a strong Black male, that every time he speaks up, somebody got to try to put him down. But you know, if a man abuses a woman, he may never feel the need to apologize, because as far as he's concerned, that woman did not obey him. And so even in the annals of American history, white people may never see a need to apologize, because Black people didn't obey them. They were God's chosen people to rule the world. So what do they have to apologize for? And until that acknowledgement comes, we're going to be fighting this race battle for some time to come. Thank you.
Phyllis, yes? What is that?
So I just want to clarify what Louise said. It wasn't any Glenn's opinion, any statement he made. It was when he made a little "it's about time" kind of remark when Marion was finished speaking. That's not being a strong Black man. That's being a rude human being, period. Thank you.
You know, sometimes, I don't mean any harm, but we get like really petty in here. All right, we do. We get really petty, and we don't follow the rules, and we say what we want to say, and then when somebody calls us on it, okay, then you want to say something, okay? If you follow instructions, you follow the rules like you're supposed to, then we wouldn't have these issues and we wouldn't have these problems. Okay, and we are moving on. Okay, Beatrice.
Great discussion. So glad to be back, and want to amen what Phyllis said about reproductive rights and decisions about parenting. Is it time? Not. Is it time? What do I do with my body? What are my choices? And also, our heads were never empty. Our heads were never empty. We brought so much knowledge with us to this continent. We were using bronze. We were making a whole lot of stuff, all those ironworks that in the French Quarter. So our heads were never empty. The fact that we could not read or write, those are not the only ways that people gain knowledge. A lot of people in South Carolina learned how to make rice, how to build rice, how to grow rice, because the Africans who came there brought those skills. So our heads were never empty. This is a great discussion. So glad to be back with you all. I've missed you. I love you. Bye.
Okay. All right. Glenn?
Um, sometimes people talk over their 2 minutes, and that's why I say about time. Uh, the yes, we may have had certain skills, but they made sure that we were not educated. You can train you can train an animal to do certain skills, but education is always necessary. When the loss of education, when you have generation after generation uneducated, the ones who came here know how to read and write in their own language. But when they got here, they were deprived of learning how to read and write, and also for the parents to pass on to their children what they brought from the motherland. They took the children away from them and put them with ones that would not educate them on where they came from and the education they had. But they kept them with the skills that were needed to serve them. That's a big difference. That's it.
All right, thank you. Jilly? Jilly, are you going to speak or not? If not, we're going to move on and I'm going to wrap up and close out the meeting.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I want to, but something's going. I'm
We can hear you, so
okay.
you can say what you have to say.
Well, I'm being.
Or you
I
can
don't know
pass.
what's going on with my computer. Just let me tell you that it keeps logging me in and out with Zoom.
It's not your computer, it's the system, I think. Because mine done that too.
The inception of the country, we were property. We were beasts of burden. They didn't never saw us as people. So even more so, they saw women as less because white people saw their own women as less. So as we evolved, even with our growth, because we've had the largest growth in terms of education of any society that didn't come here with autonomy and were given autonomy after being set free. And we're doctors, we're lawyers, we're functioning in the world when we were deprived everything. This goes on due to how the country was conceived. And even if we aren't told anything in the world, just like children know where they fall in the scheme of things just from watching TV and anything in the media. This is just more over a holdover or treated, and especially Black women, because white women really aren't respected. So if you're looking at it through white eyes, then this is exactly the outcome of it. Because if they don't even respect their own, why would they respect us? That's it.
Thank you. Okay. It is 11:21. I want to thank everybody for coming. The only comment that I really had was about the Black quarterbacks. Black quarterbacks make money. I mean, football is a business to make money. Black quarterbacks help those owners make money. And if they can prove that they are superior on the field, which will increase their coffers, then so be it. When you're talking about a Black prosecutor, they're not increasing anybody's coffers. Okay, so I think that there is a difference as far as the position and skill set that you're talking about, talking about apples and oranges. You're not really talking about the same thing. And that's the only comment that I really have. Oh, the same thing. If you're handling money, I can definitely speak to this. You are not given the same respect and autonomy as your white counterpart. Okay, and that's it. So anyway, we can stop recording now.